the network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.
This is AVWeek, episode 136, recorded Saturday, March 29th, 2014, by George.
Ready.
AVWeek.
Performing. Scan.
Week.
Online.
This is AVWeek. This is AV Week, your weekly wrap-up of audiovisual news and information. My name is Tim Albright. I'm your host. Good afternoon on a fabulous Saturday. How are you? This guy right here is George Tucker. He's the engineering coordinator for World Stage, and literally I couldn't do this without him. So how are you, brother?
I'm good. It's Saturday, and it's 50 degrees almost in the East Coast, so I'm a very happy man.
Yeah, according to mine, it says 40. So that's too bad. Michael Braithwaite. Michael is the Vice President of Multimedia Streaming for Clear One. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Anytime. And last but not least, we saved the warmest for the last. Ron Callis is in beautiful Florida. He's the CEO of One Firefly. How are you, sir?
Very good. Happy to be here.
This week we're going to talk about Cisco, we're going to talk about standards, and we're going to talk about streaming. And also Ron and One Firefly have some really cool webinars that you need to check out. We'll talk about that in a second. But first, one of the more interesting things that happens in this business is not very often you get breaking news and super secret, don't tell anybody type thing. And about 2 or 3 days ago, I received an email from someone that says, you don't know this, don't say anything until it becomes official. And I'm like, okay, so what is it? And the rumor was the fact that, George Feldstein was stepping aside from the day-to-day operations. He was no longer going to be the heading up Crestron, the company that he founded more than 40 years ago. And lo and behold, it became true. From my buddies over at CE Pro, Randy Klein named President and CEO of Crestron, founder George Feldstein, stepping aside. Now, he's still going to be the chairman of the board, right? But as in day-to-day operations, Randy's going to be the CEO, and my understanding is that George's son, Dan, is going to be the chief operating officer. Mm-hmm. So, as has happened over the last couple of years with the passing away of Dr. Bose and some other formidable industry veterans, not that George is passing away, but he is stepping aside. George, we'll start with you on this one because all three of you guys have got history and experience with Crestron. First, what is George's legacy? What is the legacy of Mr. Feldstein?
Oh, God, that's...
We only have an hour.
Sure. Show me that one.
We only have an hour.
Yeah, really, exactly. You can't really sum it up in an hour, but look, yeah, he's changed the face of what we've done. The way that he innovates and the way that Mr. Feldstein, and I still can't break myself from saying that from those years, of making the industry look in a different way really did move us forward. We were stuck in a way of doing things that was just what we knew, and every time Mr. Feldstein would make a change, it really did revolutionize. He saw stuff coming. He saw the IT revolution coming long before anyone else. There's the classic and often told story of George and the gentleman from Crestron having a debate live at a conference about where it was going and what the implications were. And George was right. Down to, if you knew the building and the new research center they did a couple of years ago, he has a little lab which he tries out all kinds of new stuff. And that kind of thought process. He had a machine that I call the Wonka machine, which basically was an air conditioner and a sort of humidifier system that used natural processes. It had layers of stones for reverse osmosis, clarification of the water, and all kinds of stuff. And it looked and sounded sometimes like a Wonka everlasting gobstopper maker. But his thought process in that always pushed the envelope. I remember doing a job for his house where we bought tons of copper because he said, run me, we're going to be putting RGB in there, we're going to be putting this stuff in. And of course what he didn't tell us was that it was Cat 5. And this is long before anyone thought we could do that stuff. And he just insisted that we could not buy He just buy Cat 5, left us with our jaws hanging like, okay. And of course, he proved that it made it work. So his legacy, in summation, is always pushing the envelope, never letting us be complacent in what we use in the AV world.
Okay. Michael, from your standpoint, what is George leaving us?
I think George is leaving us in very capable hands. First of all, has created a great machine there, and Dan. I don't know if everybody in the industry is so familiar with Dan. He will continue that, and in fact, expand much more on it. Dan has been involved in many areas for a long time there, and he is a definite chip off the proverbial block. I've worked with Dan, I've worked with George, I've worked with Randy. I've had many adventures and misadventures. In fact, to be honest, George is the real reason why I'm where I am in this industry. He believed in some punk kid, and was able to foster and believed in a lot of the ideas that I had. And so I think George's legacy will be in obviously the controls, but also as was described. If you've ever seen or been to George's house, every aspect he's fascinated in. So he wasn't the typical CEO that you find in our industry. He was curious and interested about everything in that house, everything. So, water, showers. I remember he was talking to me for, we spent, it seemed like an entire afternoon, and all we were talking about was the temperature of the water in the shower and how that was going to maintain the particular temperature for a duration and so forth. And I'm glad to hear the talk about the Cat 5, because that's such a big part of where he has led the entire industry. He is the engineering engineer. So when you look at CEOs, a lot of CEOs come from the sales side. They may even come from the marketing side and so forth. It's very different when you see someone from the engineering aspects to be involved in that. And for the longest time, he had the same car for I don't know how long. I mean, it took him because, to be honest, he didn't really care about that. He was the first there in the morning. When I worked there, we were at in fact, when I was there was only one building in Volvo Drive, and so he was the first person there, and he was typically the last person to leave. In fact, technically, I worked for Randy Klein for most of my time there, and Randy used to get upset because George and I would be off on these kind of skunk projects, so to speak, and so George and I had a system where after everybody had gone from the office and 5-6 p.m., we would then start working on some secret projects that people didn't know about. Like a perfect example, PVID. If you're familiar with PVID,
yeah.
PVID was a skunk project that was really done from the hours of 7 p.m. to midnight, and so that's. But I think you will see from Dan's point of view, Dan is going to take the company, of course, with Randy's help and with all the engineering force they have. But I think you're going to see them actually expand and even do more under Dan's leadership. And Dan's really been doing so much behind the scenes already that, I don't think people from the outside will notice much. To be honest, George likes inventing things, and he likes to bring in new things and see how they work. And I think that's always going to be there. That part he's always, whether he's running the company or whether he's still going to be the main thrust behind their innovation for quite some time.
Very good. Mr. Callis, from your standpoint, from somebody that you guys help put these systems in, what do you think the legacy of George is going to be when it comes to the industry as a whole?
I think what George brought to the industry was really his passion for science, technology, and innovation. And I think he's demonstrated that with just an amazing flood and flow of new products and innovations for the AV commercial and home marketplace for years. Through his building of the new Science and Technology and Research Center, and just building an army of engineers. He has more engineers than many companies have entire employees.
Yeah.
And that's just the R&D team. And so I think they are very well positioned for continued innovation and continued leadership. And as the guys here have mentioned, George's real passion has been working in his lab with the engineers, and it's been that way now for quite a few years. Dan and Randy and Fred have really been driving the executive leadership side of the company for years. So although I see this as more of a title change than a roles and responsibilities change. I don't think it'll change their day-to-day business one bit.
Very good.
Ron brings up a good point that Fred has been at the forefront of a lot of product development for a good long time. So they are in really able hands.
Yeah, and as clarification, Fred is Fred Bargetzi, the Vice President of Engineering, I believe, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I believe I just saw last night, I saw it on Facebook. He was just promoted to CTO, Chief Technology Officer.
Yeah.
So it sounds like across the board they've done a promotion of all the senior leadership just in the past week or two.
Very good. Yeah, I think that they're in good hands and shouldn't. This I think Ron hit it on the head, where it's more of a title change than actual day to day. All right. Speaking of changes, Revo Labs has entered into an agreement to be purchased by Yamaha. Now, the reason Yamaha says is to shore up their enterprise audio equipment presence, which is interesting because when I think of Yamaha, I think of soundboards. But this is a move to kind of push their way into and shore up their offerings for being in boardrooms and conference rooms and stuff like that. Ron, we'll kick it off with you on this one. Is this a surprise, and is it a good move by Yamaha?
I'm gonna defer to my friends here on the call. This is I'm not that familiar with Revo Labs and Yamaha. Our specialty here at Firefly is really in the I'd say the home technology space, and so this is a little bit out of my day-to-day experience.
That's all right. George, is this a good move?
I think it is. Yamaha is using Revo Labs to fill a niche. Revo Labs specializes in that executive level stylized technology. So they don't often break new grounds, Revo Labs, and I might just get hammered by people on this, but they really do present a lot of products that are focused at the high-end executive market based on solid technology that has come before. And they repackage it and they do some tweaks to it that are really good, but their channel is a really, really dedicated following of people who use this for their high-level executive folks. And they do quality products in a great marketplace that I think Yamaha wants to find. They want to sort of edge into that market without losing their accreditation in the live sound and commercial world. So this really does give them a great channel to sell and to merge into.
Michael, to George's point, they're not groundbreaking people, but they do a good job at what they do. Is this a good acquisition by Yamaha, or is this something that they may regret in a few years?
I think it's a good acquisition for them. Yamaha has, of course, lots of business units, but they haven't. They don't have a huge market share in that enterprise group room, in that UC or unified communication area so much. They have some small speakerphones that do in maybe not as much in the U.S., but outside the U.S. do all right. And this gives them a solid foundation of not only dealers and access to customers and integrators and consultants that are using their microphones into those, but it brings them definitely into the unified communication business and the enterprise group rooms, as was mentioned. Absolutely. I think it'll be good for them.
All right. From the fine folks at AV Network. Okay, so let's just put it out there. Michael, actually, we're going to go with you on the last one on this because it's about HDBaseT, and you have an involvement with a small organization called Avenue Alliance. So, not that you're competitors, but it's different. Steve Harvey, I'm sure, is a very nice person, but this article kind of caught me off guard. The title is "Now that HDBaseT is basically standard, what are the downsides?" So, my issue is using the word standard. And my buddy Kevin Iselli's favorite phrase is, "What's the great thing about standards? There's so many of them." So, Ron, because you guys use do you use HDBaseT in the home stuff you do?
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Let's answer the question first, and then maybe let's go back to the fact that, or maybe not the fact.
I'll let Michael jump in first because I know he's the most excited to respond, and then I'll feed on that.
All right, then Michael, we will do it with you. I don't think it's I don't think it's a standard, right?
So generous.
Well,
but
I think you're being too nice.
Okay.
I think you're being
trying.
way too nice. This is at best it's grandstanding, but at the worst, it's outright disingenuous. And here's why. HDBaseT, the name itself, leads many of our dealers, many of the integrators, many of the installers. They come up to me and they say, "Well, what about the standard of HDBaseT?" And I look at that and I say, you know that's not a standard, right? That's a name. That's it's I'll give you credit that it's clever that you name it to sound like a standard. Yes. And then you get an article like this that talks about it as basically a standard. Here's the problem I have is that with 10 gigabit Ethernet, what advantages do you have, first of all, with HDBaseT? You can do everything over Internet Protocol with 10 gigabit networking that HDBaseT has. And HDBaseT is available from one chip vendor. In fact, part of our product development at Clear One, we can't develop a product that you can only source the chips from one vendor. We have to be able to buy those chips from multiple vendors, and there's just some very interesting issues with this whole article. Now, with all that said, I understand that it's popular. I understand that people look at it, but it's disingenuous, the entire that title of that article.
And that was my thing as well, because I don't think it's a standard. So, Ron, you want to go off of Michael's and maybe not be as nice as me?
No, I just think it's pure marketing. It's grandstanding. I think it's someone obviously with an agenda. Steve. That's what it appears. I don't want to state that.
Allegedly.
What was that, George?
I said allegedly. We'll be like the newscasters.
Oh, no. Hey, you know what? You guys say what you want. I'll say allegedly. George will say allegedly. You two say what you want.
And it's in print, and it's online, and it's searchable, so therefore it must be true.
Oh, very nice.
Isn't that like the quote they say? The same problem with the things on the internet is they can always be made up. Abraham Lincoln.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, I just saw that yesterday.
All right, Mr. Tucker, take a swing.
Well, I mean, as Ron said and Michael said, it's marketing, and it's a quasi standard. I'll be a little bit politer, I guess, in which they're using a methodology and a certain chipset to do what they're doing. And marketing is what half of it's about, isn't it? I mean, AVB is still struggling because it's so technical sounding, and HDBaseT says, "Hey, it's 2 boxes. You got a transmitter, receiver. We do it." I mean, there's something to be said for that, and they are in damn near every product you can mention, or at least a wide swath of them. You go to Infocom, you go to CEDIA, you go to CES. That little logo is everywhere, and it is a way of saying Intel inside. Is Intel really the better chips? Ask AMD. They don't always think so. And ask some of the gamers. They don't always think so either. But Intel is the standard as we use in the nomenclature of marketing, as Ron said. So I think it could have been a very informative article, although the Roth, and I read through the entire thing, yes,
God
give me
bless
morphine,
you.
please. The legion of quotes that were at the end, I'm not quite sure if they were supposed to have footnotes on them or what. It was a Wikipedia entry is what it turned out to be in many ways.
Well said.
Well said. Yes. All right.
It's a gift.
It's a gift. Yes.
Can I ask a question?
Absolutely.
Can you tell me what any advantage to the HDBaseT is when you have fast gigabit, 10 gigabit networking?
I can give you some use cases, right? And this comes from the integrator side. And the reason I'm mentioning this is because right now I'm in the middle of developing a conference room, a multi-purpose room for a client in St. Louis, and we're putting a AVB type audio system DSP in, and the conversation got back to video, and immediately the gentleman that's heading up the project manager for it, is talking about an HDBaseT type solution. And for that use case where you have point to point, end to end, one source, one display, whether I can see from a cost standpoint, currently sitting right here, right now, Michael, that makes sense, right? Where you've got one source, one display, and you're not worried about networking it. You're not worried about DAing it in any way, shape, or form. I can see where a cost point or for a cost reason that would make sense. Is that?
I have to vehemently disagree with you on that, because with internet protocol streaming and with standard-based streaming, and you can decode and encode and ingest anything you want, I'm not sure why I need the HDBaseT is the main problem. We can take it offline, but I'll show you how you can do that one-to-one point where you don't need anything from HDBaseT. You can use your IP network infrastructure that's already there. So.
Does it come down then to that they have a box solution? What you're talking about is, yes, you can do this, and here's the little ways you can configure it with a standard set of off-the-shelf IT stuff. But a lot of times in AV, isn't it like, what's going to be the most efficient? Bang, 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 I'm done.
Yeah.
Yes, there's lots of cons to that you're restricted and that you're cornered, and there's things you can't do or it's going to be slower to get there. But sometimes convenience equals acceptance.
Sure.
I mean, why do we have squeeze cheese? You know what I mean?
come to clear1.com. There's a plug.
Yeah.
So come to clear1.com. We'll show you how you could do the one-to-one point, and you don't need any specialized networking infrastructure. You don't need to buy something from one vendor like that. So.
I may have to take you up on that, Michael. I may be.
Please do.
Get our cameras rolling.
I say you put on a pair of boxing gloves and we just film the match.
Yeah.
What are you guys?
Deathmatch.
Are you guys familiar with?
Celebrity death match.
Yeah, there we go. We'll bring back the death match. Anybody know how to do claymation? Anybody? Ron, you guys have a production team. You guys, well, yeah. Speaking of that, you have a number of webinars, which is actually our next story. You guys have a number of webinars that you've started doing, and the first webinar was called Get Found Online, which was on March 5th. The following one was on March 19th. So first of all, why do the webinars? I mean, what is the idea behind them, and what are you hoping to give back to the community?
Sure. If you look at our two larger trade organizations, CEDIA and Infocom, they're really focused, in my opinion, as one of their greatest values is education. But one of the challenges there is that education is generally mainly happening once a year at a trade show event.
Yeah.
And so in our working with dealers, I mean, here at One Firefly, we run a design and engineering business, a programming business, and a marketing business. And so we're working with integrators of all shapes and sizes, primarily throughout North America, but around the world as well. And we've just recognized that there's a lot of areas where they need help, whether that be help in getting found online and understanding how the Google algorithms are working today, and what does it take to actually get found. That was the focus of the March training webinars and seminars. And there's a plethora of subjects that we're going to cover throughout the year, and the goal is to give our industry opportunities to learn, with no strings attached really, but to learn year round. So our efforts and strategy is to offer education every week now through the end of the year. And if this is a success, then we're going to just make it a regular part of our offering. And every month it'll be covering new and diverse subjects. For this coming month, April, we're going to be covering two items. We're going to be talking about the discovery selling method, which is a method of selling where you define project scope and budget prior to entering a design phase. So as simple as that might sound, I think there are many integrators and salespeople around our industry that are going from first client meeting to producing a proposal, only bringing it back and hoping that it sticks.
Yeah.
So we're going to present some methodologies around how to make a more cohesive, effective strategy for sales. And there'll be new subjects coming every month.
Well, seriously, good for you, because that's one of those things that, I mean, there are a number of people who do webinars as well, but I thought yours was particularly good. And how can people find out? Just go to the website.
Yeah, you can follow us on Facebook. Go to facebook.com/One Firefly. We're currently, all of our webinars are under and being offered through our Firefly Creative brand around the subjects of marketing or sales. And so you can go to firefly-cs.com as well and learn about our latest offerings.
Okay.
So.
Very good. All right. Well, not to continue on the education front, Infocom and Cisco, good Lord, Crestron. Maybe I just made a Freudian slip. Maybe Cisco's going to buy Crestron. Who knows? I told you they're going to buy a control company. You just wait. Maybe Crestron. Crestron partners with Infocom on the 4K in a day video course. This is, oh my gosh. George, a couple weeks ago, just bemoaned the fact that we continue to talk about 4K. And guess what? We're going to continue to talk about 4K. George, all kidding aside, is this needed right here, right now? I mean, are we at a point where we need the education, like Ron said? There's only a couple times a year where we all get together. Do we need this now? I mean, are we at the point with 4K where we need a 4K in a day class?
I think there's a need for a primer. To double back, just like Ron said with what Ron's been doing, and Ron and I have been talking about social media and small AV company marketing for quite a while, and it's still something that needs to be done. And when I first saw the webinars he was doing, by the way, they're awesome, and it really does encapsulate what needs to be said and what needs to be learned. So kudos to that. I know that when I first saw it from Ron. I was like, that is exactly what we've been talking about for God knows how long. But in the same manner, 4K has everyone knows what 4K is, but they don't know what it is. To do that definition of is conversation, you have to be able to understand the basic premise of the technology, and we need to understand 4K. I think from the integrator perspective more than we ever needed to understand 3D. I can't believe I just said that. 3D. So yes, I think it's a great thing for them to take a leadership position on and be recognized as a leadership position on. So, I mean, we all know this is not just informative. This is not just an industry-wide, hey, guys, you need to know this. This is taking a leadership role. And I haven't seen any other forum on 4K that will encapsulate it the way I suspect they're going to do it. Okay. I see a sort of a mix between Fred Bargetti's new technology seminars he does and the way Jeffrey Singer from Crestron does his presentations in that sort of conversational, somewhat technical, bite-sized informational, but still very hardcore sessions. I mean, you can't get everything in a day, but to get the premise of it for not just, and what they're going to give is not just going to be for their DM product or whatever it is they're going to roll out, but is it necessary? Yeah, and I think they're one of the better ones to be able to tell it.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I just want to jump in there. I mean, their strategy is, frankly, very similar to what we're doing here at Firefly, and that is, obviously we're businesses. We're in business to sell a product or a service and make a profit and continue to innovate. But the way to do that is to take a way to do that from a marketing position is to present a thought leadership role and educate the marketplace on whatever the topic is. And so they're taking a thought leader position, educating the marketplace on the ins and outs of 4K. There's a lot to learn there. It's important to know that the technology and the hardware to make that happen will have to be different than what we've had up till now. And ultimately, there'll be other manufacturers that have product solutions there. But at least Crestron is taking the position of, let me make sure I educate the marketplace on what this is, what you should be concerned about, what you should be looking for in your solutions. And at that point, the audience and the members are informed and better prepared to advise their customers. So I think it's nothing but positive.
I have a question about it, though. I mean, why do we not have a multi-company seminar on this? Is it just because it'll turn into the bickering that happened a couple of years ago? Or can we actually do it? Because it's going to be important to all of us. I hate to use the term lift all boats with that, but if it's a multi-company effort to educate and promote that standard, that format, you'd probably get a bigger response, thought leadership and industry leadership aside. So I'm sort of, as I'm hearing you talk about that, Ron, and then reconsidering what I said, I'm like, I'd really, as much as I think they'll do a good job, I'd really love to see it become more than just a single presentation.
And I think that, in this case, would be Infocom's position to drive that agenda, to drive getting multiple viewpoints on the subject. It's just, as we all know, putting together a course, I mean, it's getting multiple people together. It can be wrangling cats. So, are they willing to pull all of that, put that energy in to really get a fully immersive and cohesive story together? I'm betting Crestron said, we'll do it, and they said, great, please do it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll take it from here. Michael, to George's point, is that something that, I'm not asking you to give me an official clear one position, unless you're comfortable doing that. But is that something you think that you guys or maybe another company would be kosher with coming on board?
I think so, and I do think it is the job of the industry associations. So the CEDIA Industry Association, Dave Pedigo is a great guy there that should be leading this kind of effort going forward, ISC and Infocom. If you take those three industry consortiums and industry groups, they should absolutely be teaching about higher resolution. So I will say something here that will probably get me a couple boos, I guess, but this reminds me of 10 years ago, March 29th, 2004. There were lots of people talking about 720p and how, hey, we're going to wire this building with 720p. I'm going to wire this with and if you recall, 720p was the middle resolution of high definition. And here we are all over again, 10 years, talking about ultra high definition, and we're talking about the medium resolution. And this is, to me, it catches me a little off guard because, yes, we can certainly talk about 4K, but in the exact same document where it talks about 4K, it also describes the other resolutions.
Yeah.
And so this is why I think it needs to be from the industry. It needs to be a real session, not just that, oh, by the way, I happen to have an input card that can do 4K. Okay, that's great that you could do 720p, but guess what? There are other resolutions that are out there. And so I think it's good that we need more education. I'm all for this, and if Crestron wants to do it, and Clear One, we have some efforts, and if other companies want to do it, I think it's all better. But the reason why we pay membership dues and the reason why it costs me a fortune to come to those once-a-year trade shows and put a booth there is that the industry should be the one that is promoting and pushing this education, further.
The comment I want to make to that, though, is what content is closer to the verge of being real and live. And although there are other resolutions, and yes, 4K is somewhere in the middle, it's just what's closer to actually being readily available to the mass marketplace. And I think it's, again, I'll go back, it's marketing. 4K strikes me as being closer to being a legitimate content source resolution, and so thus that's why the marketing buzz would be around 4K versus 8K or alternatives.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, that's the exact same argument that came up 10 years ago when people wanted to talk about 720p. Oh, no one has a 1080p source. No one is using 1080p, and all I'm saying is there's always going to be a higher resolution source. All I'm saying is, since it's one document and one standard that talks about these resolutions, if we're going to educate our industry, let's talk about that standard and that document, including 4K and 8K and whatever's in there, because there are people who came back to me later and said, hey, I've already wired this building, we already have our matrix switches in that can handle 720p, and now the customer has these 1080p sources. What do I do? They had to replace the equipment. And by the way, that's always going to be the case. But what I'm saying is it's a very deja vu feeling right now in the industry from what happened with 720p.
Well, and the danger is when you start designing, if you're a design engineer or you do design build AV systems, the danger is the time it takes for that to happen, what Michael's talking about, is exponentially shorter than it was 10 years ago, right? You could design a system, maybe 6 months out, maybe a year out, and the technology is not quite going to be there. You start designing a system today, and you don't put 4K in, and then maybe make provisions for 8K. By the time that might get to the bid process and the actual build out in a year or 18 months, you might be doing what Michael's talking about, which is replacing things altogether. So I see your point, Michael, where maybe focus on 4K, but also give the people in attendance the knowledge of everything that's in that document. I mean, it's kind of like talking about HDCP and making sure that everybody understands all the stuff that's happening with HDC 2.0 and stuff. So yeah,
absolutely.
All right, Cisco is retiring their their silver tier major market program. And the reason I mention this is because one thing that's been interesting to me, going from being a technology manager to being an integrator, are these different partner programs and the pricing differences and spiffs, which I've never heard of before in my life until I started selling things and putting things in programs and designing systems. Michael, I don't know if Clear One has a spiff or incentive program for people. But is this? I mean, are these good programs to have, or do they unfairly maybe influence salespeople or designers when they go to design a system?
Well, I think you can argue that they're good to have, but there's also distractions that they can cause. There's channel disruption that they can cause. The interesting part on the Cisco side is that it's really a margin fight that's going on between the different partner levels. And, if you look at Cisco's earnings calls or when they give their financials, if you look at what their margins that they report, their margins are very healthy at Cisco. They're in the 60-plus, point margins. However, if you look at these programs, they're nowhere near that. You're talking about single-digit margins between these programs, and so I think what you're seeing is they're trying to reset up, and make a smoother marketplace for their products going forward. At Clear One, we have several partner programs, a gold and a silver, and a very similar type strategy, and I'm sure lots of companies do.
Yeah.
So.
All right, Ron, are these good programs to have, or do you think maybe they're a distraction and they unfairly pit one product against another?
Well, every manufacturer is out there clawing to get their piece of the pie, and when they're working with their dealers or their partners or representatives in the marketplace, having spiffs or programs, dealer levels, dealer rewards, it absolutely makes a difference. And that's from, in my past when I was a frontline soldier for Lutron and for Crestron, working with the dealers in the marketplace, it makes a difference. With the right program or the right spiff incentive, you can have someone come in and convert from product A to product B, and it can happen rather quickly in a matter of months. You can ship to marketplace with the right program and the right delivery. So I appreciate what Cisco's doing. They're trying to streamline their program, and ultimately they're just trying to drive the bottom line by having the right programs in place, knowing and ensuring that they have people with the right education and certifications under their belt so that the end product is that much better.
Yeah.
So I think it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I think the one thing about that is making sure that the people who have their hands on the product are properly certified and know what they're doing, because that's only going to enhance the end the end user's experience, right? Because if you don't know what you're doing and you just kind of you buy a Cisco product off the back of some guy's truck, you're less likely to properly install it.
I mean, in the broader sense of just products in general, I'll pick on the subject of, say, lighting control systems. Yeah. There's 5-6 major players in that game, and the consumer, when they're buying, Mr. Homeowner or Mr. Commercial Client, what they want is they want their space to be automated. They want it to work. They want it to be reliable. They want it to do what they were told it would do when the salesman was waving his hands. Ultimately, the dealer or the technology contractor, is going to dip into his tool bag and pull out the product mix that he feels is best going to convey that. And that is what enables that person, in many cases, to switch from product A to product B, because within many product categories, the products do very, very similar things, and they are in a very similar fashion reliable and work. And so that's where you play the spiff game and the dealer programs to get in and get the dealers to ship from product A to product B. And it's a constant battle. Some manufacturers do it better than others.
George, what say you? Are these good programs, or are they detrimental?
I've never had to deal with them, but in a personal way. But what I wonder is, when a company like Cisco gets rid of a level of certification, my question is, what's not working? Is it because what they sought to achieve in the marketplace isn't happening, or is that that level of certification not making the money it should? We all know that those are money makers in some ways. They're not phenomenal, but they are money makers, right? And guys, correct me if I'm wrong. You guys have dealt on that side of it more than I have. But that's my question: is what's not working? Is something not selling? Is something not establishing itself in the marketplace the way they wanted to, and they had to make a change? And that means that some dealers get bumped down, some dealers get bumped up, and we all know what that means towards their, special pricing and their other relationships. And does it make those the ones who bumped down from, say, silver down to a master? I think they said it was. Yeah. That they have to really struggle to get back up, and that means more training, more people coming up, and everybody's at that level? Or was it simply that the people in the silver line, that marketplace no longer needs that kind of push? I don't know, and I don't know enough about Cisco's programs to say that, but it always leaves me suspicious, having seen some of these programs from the inside. That's what it's all about.
All right. Go ahead.
It could also be that it's just a margin stacking. It's just that they have a limited amount of margin, and when you have too many programs, if you really don't have that much differentiation in those costing structures for the different programs, then I could see where they took out like a silver and then say, okay, well, we only have enough margin to really, satisfy these two other levels. So.
Yeah, I could see that, and that's the other thing is when you start moving around the different programs, people who sell X amount on a given year, and let's say that you average $100,000 a year, and that level has always been gold, and suddenly you're in silver. Well, those margins are different, right? The amount you pay for the product could possibly be different, and systems that are bids that you've already gotten out, and it depends on how they work it. You may end up losing a couple points. So.
When you look at this, I read it as the 80-20 rule. They removed the silver, and they amped up on the master side. And, it's a simple rule in most markets that 20% of your dealers do 80% of your volume. And so I'm just imagining they're rewarding their better partners and removing the energy and time to manage a lower end of the marketplace that maybe isn't performing.
No, and that may be too. That's a good point as well. All right, guys, a couple more stories. Not really stories, but just some things for you guys in the audience to check out. There's a couple of AVIT training happening. We'll put a link on the website, as Ron mentioned, the once-a-year thing at Infocom this year. Networking technology and the networking AV systems. And the fine folks at SCN and AV Network has their Installation Products Award. Please check it out. Clear One is on here, as well as a number of other fine people. So we will put a link on that as well. So, guys, thank you so much. Ron Callis is from One Firefly. He is the CEO. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Where can people find you?
Best way is Ron, R-O-N, at onefirefly.com. That's O-N-E firefly.com.
Okay. Check him out, please, for the webinars that are coming up in the next couple months. Michael Braithwaite. Michael is the Vice President of Multimedia Streaming with Clear One. Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir. Thank you for having me again.
And where can people find you or Clear One?
At Dr. Decibel on Twitter. And then if you would like to know about networking technologies, definitely come to clearone.com and look at something there called Enterprise Streaming.
Enterprise Streaming. I'm actually there. That's why I was going to ask you that after offline.
Excellent.
So, Enterprise Streaming. All right. Mr. Tucker, thank you, sir. George Tucker is the engineering coordinator for World Stays. Where can people find you if they'd like to stalk you?
At Tucker2s on any social platform. I also write for Commercial Integrator, Corporate Tech Decisions, Red Band, and a few other miscellaneous guys here and there.
And he has a full-time job, folks. So he's a real.
I need a hobby.
He needs. You should take up hockey. Oh wait. All right.
Hey, they'll make it to the playoffs this year. I think they will.
George is a Rangers
probably just
fan,
damned them.
So. My name is Tim Albright. Don't follow me, but go by the website if you would, please. AVNation.tv. AVNation.tv. You will find this program as well as a host of others. We had a brand new education focus show called EdTech come out this week. We have our weekly AV Apps show. We also have a Live Life that has posted recently, and a special that George did with the folks at Draper and their new screen. So check that out.
We also did the Audinate with Dante.
Yes.
We
And
have
DIY,
a new, DIY today.
Yeah,
I'm
taped
sorry?
last night, right?
Yeah, DIY was last night, and it'll post to the site shortly.
Yeah.
And there's a new Pico Prospectives coming out next week.
Very cool. See, I told you I can't do this without him. So I guess I wouldn't forget all that stuff. So yeah, go by the website. Also, some exciting things coming up. I think they're exciting. They're exciting to me. So we have some really cool things coming out, and we will be at Infocom. So check out the website for more information on that. AVNation.tv. AVNation.tv. Thanks so much for listening. It's all the time we have for AV Week.